Welcome to Goldfish on Games and Cover Disc Face Off, where we care more about the content of the disc than the page, as we dive into the Amiga magazines of March 1994. This includes the one for Amiga, Amiga Action and Amiga Power. Fight! First up we have Amiga Action issue 55 that came with two cover discs, starting with the Super Methane Brothers. This is a take on that classic 8-year-old game by this point, Bubble Bubble, as it's a single screen platformer. One that has you blowing, sucking and then spapping up the walls of the various enemies. Wait, does that sound dirty? I didn't mean it to. Let's check with an impartial magazine reviewer.
No, you're fine. That was totally innocent.
Thank you, Dudley.
Unlike your mum.
I said, thank you, Dudley of Yesterzine.
I feel all giddy.
So yeah, you have to spray the monsters with the gas, and while they're floating about, suck them back in, and then eventually fire them at a wall to kill them. Miss the wall, and they will come out quite angry and actively go on the attack. Which is a bit of a problem, as there tends to be a lot of creatures on the screen at once. And they aren't all that predictable with their movements at the best of times. The demo has 4 levels in total, and you'll get to see a wide range of things to get rid of, and I'm a little disturbed that some of them look quite human-like, or at a minimum they're tool users. This game also contains a few other firsts for our series, as this is the first AGA game we've come across. But not only that, you can actually play this on original hardware as well, as it gives you this option on startup. Now you might be wondering, what are the differences between the two? And putting them side by side? I don't think I could definitively say which one looks best. The colour palettes are different, and there's some different patterns on the backgrounds, but apart from that they seem very similar. To the point I had to double check when I recorded the footage to make sure I knew which was which, as I would have mistaken them otherwise. It's a cool idea to give multiple versions of the same game, but when the improved version really doesn't make the hardware shine, I think you've made a bit of a mistake. The second disc has 2 more demos, the first being Dithel in Space. This is a shooter that allows for 2 simultaneous players, with a few options on how that's handled. The basics seem to be just fly around this area and, well, shoot everything. It has some jetpack vibes with how you move around and fire, but there isn't anything as complex as collecting ship parts here. It's just shoot everything and then collect those little icons that fly out if you want some extra points. But every so often you might find a pickup that will increase your firepower. Not that it's really needed in the demo. Unfortunately there's no audio, so it's all very quiet. A few pew 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 or kabooms would really have been welcome. And when you finish the first level, which really isn't all that hard, we arrive at this slightly different shooter, where we have to destroy all the asteroids that are flying across the screen, all while this background does its best copper act. And that's it, there's only 2 levels in the demo, and once that's over, well, you're treated to this nice set of sequences of what you can expect in the full game. The annoying thing is, this is all the demo will do from now on. As far as I can tell, outside of the old 3-finger salute, you can't restart the demo. It's a fun little game, but having to restart your Amiga to give it another go is a little bit annoying. The second demo is Jet Strike: The Fantasy Missions. I know Jet Strike is a bit of a cult favourite, but I've never really gotten to grips with it, and this demo is no different. I can sort of get my head around the controls, with taking off, flying around, and even raising the undercarriage, but the controls have never really gelled with me. and I really find it hard to complete most of the missions. The fantasy part of this demo comes from the very interesting range of craft that you have. There's a basic airplane from the regular game, but who cares about that when you can be on a flying carpet? I can show you the world, then faceplant right into it. And there's also this eagle that has the most dangerous droppings ever seen. And I've even seen a Pegasus that strangely acts like a helicopter. The missions themselves seem quite typical of the main game. Destroy enemy bases, shoot down enemy aircraft, and so on. But now, there's UFOs, and fantasy targets and environments for you to fly around in. This is really quite a deep demo, with a lot of options for you to mess around with. I just wish I got more out of it. Next up is Amiga Power issue 35, that includes a single disc. But on that disc they've managed to stuff 2 demos as well as a full PD game. And that first one being Team 17's game Arcade Pool, which is actually quite a lot of fun. The on-screen indicators are useful, and there isn't any of those moving power meters that you have to deal with. Just set the direction, power, and then hit the mouse button to take the shot. But you'll better do it fast, as this is a timed demo, with a very short time limit of about 2 minutes from what I can tell. As it seems that they were worried that if you could finish off an entire round, then you might just be happy playing this demo forever, rather than, going out and buying this budget price game. I wish they'd given you a little bit more time, or done something else like locking out potting the 8-ball, as you barely get going with a match and then it's all over, as it takes some time for that AI to take its shots. The title screen also boasts that it supports better graphics and sound on an AGA machine, which was also held back for the final game, as in the demo it's just the A500 version. The second demo is Statics, which is a puzzle game where you have to try and keep the seesaw balanced, which is obviously made harder by the fact you have to keep dropping new blocks into place. I've played similar PD games to this in the past, but this has its own little twist on the idea, which is all about those symbols you can see on the blocks, and you can already tell where this is going, can't you? Yes, line up 3 in a row either horizontally, vertically or diagonally, and those blocks will vanish. Now this is both a benefit and can be a curse as you clear the wrong blocks and it could tip the board over. Or alternatively, it might balance it right out again. It's all down to your quick thinking and positioning. You'll have to keep this up while it starts to throw you these garbage blocks, which as far as I can tell you can't remove. So careful placement of these are very important. It's a fun demo, but I'm not sure how you can expand this out to a full game, even if it is sold at a budget price. I think this could have been an absolutely excellent shareware or PD game. A bit like the next title, which is Tetris Pro. Which I'm sure you're all surprised to hear is a Tetris clone. But as the magazine itself pointed out, this is Tetris with a point. And that is when you clear lines, you start to reveal a picture that's behind it. Now being on the cover of a magazine, the pictures themselves aren't going to be all that risque. But you can imagine how that could have been a direction this could have taken. To start off with, it's a simple, clear a line to reveal a line. 1. And did you hear that as well? the game announces the number of lines cleared, which is a really cool touch. And when you manage to bring the image to life, you get to then sit and look at it and then go on to the next level.
Do what you have to do.
Which might bring along its own complications, such as having garbage in the well that you have to work around. Or later on you'll have to clear multiple lines at once to reveal ones in the picture. And with 70 images, or so I've been told, there's a lot for you to be going on with. And don't think it ends there either, as it also throws another twist at you, the power-up blocks. These always come in square blocks, and are activated by completing a line with them. And this can be as simple as extra points, or as evil as disabling the next block. And I've even seen some that will flip the entire screen. One of the more useful ones is the bomb, which will remove all the empty spaces around your blocks, which, as you might expect, will mean all of the parts start to fall down into place, which is amazing at clearing a whole bunch of lines at once, and is really necessary on some of those later levels. All of this has a great level of presentation and flair. It's absolutely amazing that this is a PD title, and I've definitely spent more time with this than any other title in this episode. And finally, we have the One for Amiga issue 66, which came with 2 discs, one of which turned out to have not been archived, and thankfully I had a copy in my collection, so a quick disc copy later and it's now on the Internet Archive. Which just so happened to be disc 1, which has 1 demo and 2 PD titles, with that game being Benefactor, an interesting mix of platforming and lemmings, as your goal is to save some poor captured person or persons and get them to the exit, along with yourself obviously. This involves having to find a key to open up the cage that's holding the dude. Then, if they happen to be smart, they will try to make their way to the exit. Otherwise they're in stupid mode, and will blindly just walk off, possibly to their death. And they don't even have the ability to be thrown, or be able to pull themselves up from ledges, and the only way to solve this is to get this machine running, as when it's filled with paint, it can apply a bit of smarts to that person. So the levels become a mix of trying to find the machine and the paint, and then getting them running before releasing the person. And while this might not be the most graphically advanced game ever, there is some charm to its look, with some really nice animated touches going on with the objects in the world. And surprisingly in a way, this was also made by the Pinball Wizards Digital Illusions, and has all the lovely touches that they like to put on their games. And the first PD game of this disc is Orc Attack, an Amos game that has a lot of effort put into it, as we get to see from this intro and the map screen.
Let's rock!
And then when we get into the game we find, well, it really doesn't live up to its own hype. You play as this knight at the top of the screen, who has to take down all the orcs that are attacking. To do that you'll have to pick up rocks from the side, move around and then drop them. It's just the movement is a little odd, as after you press a direction he'll just keep going, and you have to hit up or down to stop him in his tracks. At which point you can then obviously throw the rock. But because you have to wait for rocks and there's multiple orcs attacking at once, it's more than likely one or two of them will make it to the top of the battlements. At which point you have to get your sword, and this knight doesn't have it on him. So instead you have to get your squire to throw it to you. It's then more fiddly movement and having to time your attacks to take care of the orc. And if there's a few of them grouped together, well, you're most likely gonna die. If you allow one of the special ones up to the top, you're gonna die. Forget to throw your sword back so you can get more rocks, you're gonna die.
You can never defeat my kind.
I've seen the game over screen on this more than the actual game itself. I can see where the dev was going with it, but this needed some real work. The second PD game is Polymorph, which at first glance you might just think is a standard Sokoban game, with you pushing these blocks around. And you're mostly right, but the goal is here to join up the coloured blocks to make matches. This is easy enough when there's just 2 of each colour to match, but when the numbers increase you really have to put more time into the planning, as you might need to get 3 of a colour together. This really wouldn't have been much of an issue if it wasn't for that timer, which really wants to be 0 and will make its way down that screen as fast as possible. There are lots of levels and the difficulty nicely increases, but it does seem to very quickly run out of new ideas, and on top of everything else, there's also a limited number of lives. So it's an interesting game, but I really think they could have done without that timer on top of everything else. This is the type of game you really want to be able to take your time with. The final disc has 2 football games, with the first being a demo for Championship Manager Italia. But before you get going, you're going to need to have either a hard drive or 2 spare floppy disks, as this is quite the demanding demo and has to expand out to fill some space. But once you're running, you'll realise why, as this is a huge part of the game. The real limitation in place here is that you can only play half of a season. Now, I've never been much of a football fan, but I have played a bit of Premier Manager, so I have some limited idea of how all this works. But if you're coming in blind, this could be a lot to take in. So it's probably best just to go with the quick game and just put your name in and just get going. Building your squad is a good place to start, even if it is a little daunting. Using those letters at the side of each player, we can work out who is a goalie and what area each one is best in. The other option is to look at all the player stats, which is a lot. Or you can use the buttons at the bottom to quickly show defense, mid, and attackers. The numbers running across the screen is how you select each player. And after selecting our team and setting up a few friendly games, we're ready to start a match, which all looks a little basic, with just a few bars for each side and some text, but it is enough for you to go on. And if you're lucky, you win, otherwise, well, it's probably going to be a draw. All in all, this is a huge demo with a lot going for it. Championship Manager was always the more in-depth and complex of the management sims, and I can imagine this would have been an amazing demo for those who enjoyed the others in the series. The second game is this full PD title called Premier Picks, and it's a bit of an odd one, as it's a football game, but like none you've ever seen. It starts off normal enough with you selecting the teams you want to play as, and then you get this very detailed league table, with all the information you could ever want. And then we proceed to play a whole season week by week. And at first you'll see those other teams have their games, and then it will be your turn, and you might not be ready for this, as it's a card flipping football game. Each player takes it in turn to flip a card, with there being near misses, substitute cards, fouls, and obviously goals. Eventually one of you will get the halftime card, and then you get to repeat the whole thing again for the second half. If you have the help mode on, you'll get to see a random number of cards, which can be very helpful, as I swear that AI cheats, as more often than not, after you flip a goal card, they will also just happen to flip a goal card. They just happen to pull ahead, well looky here, it's the full-time card. It could be 100% randomised, but it really doesn't feel like it. I'm really not sure what to make of this one. The presentation is great, there's lots of little audio clips and some nice images, but the gameplay itself is just so weird. And there we have it. What are the results? Well, in last place, I think it has to go to Amiga Action. The dual demo idea was interesting, but they needed a better game to show it off. In second place is the one for Amiga. It had quite the range of games, but personally only Benefactor really stood out. So in first place is obviously Amiga Power. Arcade Pool was fun, but I spent more time with Tetris Pro than the rest of the games combined. And it's for that reason alone that I've given it the top spot. As always, if you agree, disagree, or have anything else to say, let me know down in the comments. I'll be lurking there. And of course, a special thanks to Dudley of Yesterzine, who joined us in this episode. Please make sure to check out his channel. And until next time, I've been the Goldfish, that was a blocking good time, and this was Goldfish on Games. Thank you for watching Cover Disc Face Off. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, you should be able to find 2 other videos on the screen right now. Or you might even want to subscribe or even ring that bell icon, because that's what I've been told that you need to do. So until next time, thank you and goodbye.